Secretary General for the Middle East, Asia, and the Pacific, Departments of Political and Peace-Building Affairs and Peace Operations. I would now give the floor to the Permanent Observer of the Observer State of Palestine.
Mr. President, we thank Pakistan for elevating this open debate to a ministerial level, and in this connection, we welcome Your Excellency presiding over this very important meeting. I also would like to thank ASG, Mr. Khalkhariari, for his briefing. Mr. President, 4-year-old Razan fought for as long as she could, but her body gave up and she died of malnutrition on Sunday. Yesterday, 6-year-old Yusuf died of starvation. He was among 15 people to starve to death in the last 24 hours in Gaza. Israel has ravaged Gaza. It has destroyed nearly everything in that narrow strip of Palestinian land. But nearly 2 million human beings remain, including 1 million children. They must be saved. Israel has destroyed everything: their lives, their homes, the mosques and the churches, the schools and the hospitals, the entire infrastructure of life, and even the cemeteries. But make no mistake, the real target is the 2 million Palestinians who remain in Gaza. For Israel, their destruction is required for its scheme to take over the land. The fact Netanyahu and his government are actively pursuing transforming Gaza into a land without a people through genocide and ethnic cleansing under the unconvincing disguise of voluntary migration has only been made possible by the impunity they enjoy. All of what is happening now was predictable, premeditated and planned. It is a criminal and cruel enterprise occurring openly for all to see. Do you know when was the first plan for so-called voluntary migration presented to the Israeli cabinet? 13th October 2023. Go back to what we said in this very chamber 20 months ago. We said this would be happening. It took tens of thousands of Palestinians killed for the world to acknowledge it. How many more need to die before getting the world to act to stop this genocide? Mr. President, in Gaza, starved journalists are reporting about starved health and humanitarian personnel trying to save the lives of starving infants and children and their starving families. People are dying of hunger and thirst by design or while desperately trying to get food or water by design. People are collapsing in the streets while being forcibly displaced yet again by design. People are being gunned down and murdered by Israeli soldiers for merely trying to get a bag of flour or lentils to feed their families, again by design. Every day now, we receive heart-wrenching messages from Gaza with few words: I am hungry. This is what our children are saying, and every individual in Gaza is saying, I am hungry. There is no food for my family. We are dying. Help us. What should we tell them? What should the Security Council tell them? that the whole world is against this starvation policy, and yet it is worsening. That no one wants to see people in Gaza starving, and yet the world watches on as they die of hunger and thirst. Should we read to them the strong statements issued or the resolutions adopted? What should we tell them? They hear of outrage, condemnation, pressure, and deals being made, but find no food to save their lives and the lives of their loved ones, or get shot to death while trying to reach it. They bury their sons and daughters every day. They grow thinner as their bodies eat away at them every day, wasting away, their struggle to survive more painful and more crushing every day. What should we tell them? That the negotiations for a ceasefire continue, and that in the meantime Israel has been given a right to massacre them and to deny them aid to life? Is that what international law stipulates? Is that what humanity dictates? What should we tell them? That this is the extent of what the world can do or is willing to do to save Palestinian lives? That the fact the perpetrators of these horrors are Israelis means they cannot be held to account? That there is aid at the borders and brave UN and humanitarian personnel ready to distribute this aid as they had done before, but we cannot get Israel to open the crossings and allow the aid to be distributed without killing those distributing it or those receiving it. What is our collective plan to actually save lives? What is being done now that could actually stop this horror? That is the only measure that matters. Are we doing what is necessary to save the millions of lives at risk? Are we upholding our legal, political, humanitarian, moral, and human obligations? And the answer is absolutely clear: we are not. So which one is it? Are Palestinian lives not worth saving? Or does Israeli supremacy extend as far as conferring upon Israel a right of life and death over the Palestinian people as a whole? Mr. President, it is now for every state to determine where it stands at this historical juncture. Every single country will be asked, what did you do during this genocide? Not what you said or what you considered doing, but what did you actually do? What did you do to stop it and stop the destruction of human life? There is no time to waste and no place for self-inflicted powerlessness. Countries have tools they need to use, nationally and collectively, to bring the genocide to an end. Ask yourselves, did we do everything possible? And I assure you, it is impossible to say yes. We call for a coalition of the willing to take every action necessary now to end the genocide, to uphold international law and save what is left of our humanity under the rubble in Gaza, and end the occupation and conflict. A year ago, the ICJ adopted a landmark opinion on ending the unlawful presence of Israel in the occupied Palestinian territory that spelled out in no uncertain terms the obligations of Israel and, as importantly, the obligations of third parties. You. Any state claiming to be a law-abiding state must take action to comply with this opinion and ensure it moves away from complicity and contributes to accountability. The General Assembly called over a month ago upon all member states to individually and collectively advance accountability and take all measures necessary in line with international law and the Charter of the United Nations to ensure compliance by Israel, the occupying power, with its obligations. Since the adoption of that resolution, more than 3,000 Palestinians were killed, the majority women and children. States must act now to stop these atrocities. I represented the state of Palestine at the meeting of the Hague Group in Bogota, Colombia, where countries came together and adopted concrete measures to halt the genocide and advance accountability. This is an important step in the right direction. Several of the countries represented here have also announced concrete steps and initiatives to the same effect. But much more needs to be done, and fast. The commitment is good by some, but it's not sufficient. We need more from all of you. Within days, not weeks, and certainly not months, we are out of time, because every day we fail to act, children are killed, starved, orphaned, burned, disabled, and traumatized. Families are shattered. Life is destroyed. Red lines are useless if they can be crossed over and over again without consequences. Rules are worthless if we are not willing to sanction their breacher. Words are meaningless if they are not followed by action. We need you to act, and act now. Of course, it is better to speak out rather than stay silent, but speaking out cannot be an alternative to action, especially when it is evident Israel is not listening and becoming only more brutal, only more dangerous. And we should not pretend we are not hearing what Israel is saying or not seeing what it is doing. Netanyahu, Katz, Saar, Smotrich, and Ben Gvir are clear. They say there are no innocent people in Gaza. They call our children children of darkness. They call our people human animals and have been acting accordingly. They spoke of inflicting death and destruction on all of Gaza, and they did. They are confessing to their own crimes and are committing them in plain sight for all to see. 7 decades of impunity make them confident they have no reason to hide their intentions or actions. Mr. President, we warn against all those who try to portray this conflict as a religious conflict, including those who do so to shield Israel from criticism and condemnation. This is not a conflict between Jews and Muslims. It is a war against Palestinian presence in the land of Palestine. Palestinian Christians are not spared. From Gaza to Taibe, from Bethlehem to Jerusalem. The Israeli strike against the Holy Family Church is not the first of its kind. By the way, this is the church that the late Pope Francis used to call every day. The historic Greek Orthodox Church of Saint Porphyrius in Gaza was bombed in the early days of the war, as was the great Omari Mosque. 2 Palestinian women were shot and killed on the grounds of the Holy Family Church back in December 2023. Settlers' terror attacks are about forcibly displacing Palestinian communities regardless of their faith and about stealing their land. Christians are harassed, attacked, and beaten like their Muslim brothers and sisters. When trying to celebrate their holy days, priests and nuns report attacks against them and the church properties. They are spat on, insulted, and threatened by Israeli extremists. This is not a conflict between Jews and Muslims. The diversity of our people reflects the diversity of this land and its rich history and its significance for all monotheistic religions. And the solidarity movement with Palestine is comprised of people of all nationalities and all faiths, coming together against injustice, against occupation and apartheid, against oppression and genocide. And it includes Israelis who care about justice, but also about Israel and its future. And they know that the path on which Israel has embarked, by which it thinks it can impose its will on the region through bullets and bombs and expects surrender than peace, is reckless and wrong and will lead to devastating effects for the region and the world. Mark my words, Israel's genocide in Gaza will redefine the region and our world for generations to come. And what we do next will determine in what way. Let me repeat that. Mark my words. Israel's genocide in Gaza will redefine the region and our world for generations to come. And what we do next will determine in what way. Mr. President, an alternative path is possible if we act now, where life is restored in Gaza, where freedom for the Palestinian people is achieved, where Palestinians and Israelis can live in shared space and security, and where the region as a whole can experience peace, stability, and prosperity. This path of just and lasting peace, upholding international law and based on the relevant UN resolutions and the fulfillment of the inalienable rights of the Palestinian people, including self-determination and the realization of their right to their independent state, and the implementation of the two-state solution, with Palestine and Israel living side by side in peace and security. This is the only path forward. It requires the mobilization of all states to advance freedom and justice leading to peace and security. The international conference to be convened by Saudi Arabia and France at the end of this month offers a unique opportunity to transform international law and the international consensus into an achievable plan and to demonstrate resolve to end the occupation and conflict once and for all, for the benefit of all peoples and of all the states of the region. That is the path that must be taken with courage and commitment and without delay. Mr. President, It all starts with Gaza, with the children of Gaza. For now, history will remember us all for the lives we failed to save. But many more lives remain to be saved. Let us not fail them. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Permanent Observer of the Observer State of Palestine, for your statement. I will now give the floor to the representative of Israel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I believe this chamber and the UN would benefit from something basic, a full and honest overview of the current state of our region. Let's begin in Gaza, where Hamas continues with its deprived tactics. 50 innocent people remain held hostage. Israel has been working tirelessly to bring them home. We have made compromise after compromise, crossing lines no other nation would consider. But Hamas has rejected each and every offer. Even as we speak, we receive rejections from Hamas. For Hamas, the suffering of its own people is their greatest weapon. The longer the misery continues, the longer they can feed it into their propaganda machine. I am sure that all of you will address the humanitarian situation. But I will remind you, you all must focus your pressure where it belongs, on Hamas. They are the ones who are saying no to the offer. If you don't believe me, you can ask the US, Qatar, Egypt, the ones who are trying to negotiate. They are rejecting every offer. In Lebanon, the new government has made promising statements about reform, and we are listening. But Hezbollah is busy attempting to rearm and reassert itself in southern Lebanon and Beirut. We have seen this movie before. We know how it ends. Israel will never allow this to happen. We will not permit Hezbollah to rebuild its terror infrastructure on our northern border. In Iran, the genocidal regime that spent 12 days launching missiles at Israeli civilians is trying to restart its nuclear program. Since today we have the so-called privilege of the presence of Deputy Foreign Minister Rabadbi here today, so let me ask him directly, what is your plan now? Will you continue with your murderous agenda? Will you keep running toward a nuclear bomb? Will you keep expending your ballistic missiles for attacks on civilians? Will you keep pumping money into your terrorist proxies? You don't need to answer, because we already know it. Now is the time for action. Sanctions must not be lifted, they must be imposed now, on the regime's economy, on its terror network, on its ballistic missile program, and on the individual leaders who sit in Tehran and plot murder as their foreign policy. In Syria, jihadist forces have traveled south of Damascus to the Druze city of Suwaida, where they have committed unimaginable atrocities. Hundreds of innocent men, women, and children now lie dead. I have personally received hundreds of calls from my Druze friends from Israel, terrified and horrified by what is happening to their people. Their family ties cross the border. Their brothers and sisters live both in Suwaida and in Israel. For us, this is personal. It is Israel's sacred moral duty to stand by our Druze brothers and sisters in their time of need. We are guided by our unshakable moral compass. We will not stand idly by while innocent minorities are slaughtered, just kilometers away from their Israeli family members. So yes, the Middle East today is embroiled in chaos, but is also filled with opportunity. There is chaos for the innocent hostages still trapped in Hamas's tunnels, chaos for the civilians and minorities in Lebanon and Syria still facing terror, chaos for the entire region as Iran continues to push the world to the edge. But there is also opportunity, because the forces of darkness have been weakened. Hamas has lost much of its terror infrastructure and its senior leadership. Hezbollah was crippled by Israel's operations last year. Iran's nuclear and ballistic missile programs have been set back in ways that were once thought impossible. Israel is making the Middle East safer for everyone who values peace and calm. In other words, we are doing the work of the United Nations. While Israel dismantles terror networks and protects innocent lives, what does the UN do? It clings to its political agenda. It protects its bias. It defends the agencies that have long abandoned neutrality. You don't need to look far to see this bias in action. Just look at the statements and conduct of Tom Fletcher and his agency, OCHA. Too often, Mr. Fletcher has forgotten or decided to ignore that his statements have consequences. He has repeatedly abandoned his sacred responsibility to act without bias, choosing instead to fuel a political campaign against Israel. Several weeks ago, Mr. Fletcher claimed that 14,000 babies in Gaza would starve to death within 48 hours. That statement was false. It was baseless. While he quietly walked it back, the damage had already been done. But with another lie, Mr. Fletcher has not walked back: the accusation that Israel is committing genocide. He knows it's not true. He knows it. There are facts, international law, you have to prove intention. Yet he said it anyway. That word carries more weight than any other accusation. To use it falsely is to dishonor the memory of real genocide victims and to endanger more lives by fueling hatred. It is not too late to correct the record. Israel demands that Mr. Fletcher retract his statement, publicly, unequivocally, and immediately. But this is no longer just about one official's reckless remarks. His responsibility has infected OCHA from top to bottom. Let's start with the data. On May 6, OCHA published figures claiming to show civilian casualties in Gaza. Officially, just 2 days later, those figures were reduced by over 10,000. Not by 1, not by 10, not by 100, and not by 1,000, by 10,000. Just like that. No explanation, no accountability, just a quiet adjustment. No, 10,000 less. As if the original numbers weren't already plastered across headlines worldwide. OCHA has built its reports almost exclusively on data from Hamas-run institutions. There is no independent verification, no cross-checking, no effort to distinguish between civilians and terrorists. Every casualty is listed as a civilian. This violates the UN's own standards in every other conflict. But when it comes to Israel, those standards disappear. At the same time, OCHA has actively undermined Israel's humanitarian efforts in Gaza. It tracks only UN-coordinated aid while ignoring the thousands of trucks of food, medical supplies, and fuel that Israel, the private sector, and other partners have delivered. OCHA has undercounted over 13,000 trucks. That's a deliberate choice to misrepresent reality. Perhaps most disturbing, Israel has uncovered clear evidence of Hamas affiliation within OCHA's ranks. So when you combine all of that with Mr. Fletcher's repeated falsehoods, you are not looking at a humanitarian agency, You are looking at a propaganda machine. I have said many times before, Israel believes in humanitarian work. We are committed to helping civilians, to protecting innocents, and to ensuring aid reaches those who need it. But we will not work with organizations that have chosen politics over principles. Mr. Fletcher has made it clear that OCHA is no longer a neutral agency. Israel is therefore left with no choice but to act. Today, I announce that Israel will take steps to ensure that what has been happening with OCHA will no longer continue. Hundreds of OCHA employees are undergoing security vetting. Key employees will not have their permits renewed following clear evidence of strong affiliation with Hamas. Some were even involved in the atrocities of October 7. Israel will no longer grant automatic visas to OCHA's international staff. Visas will now be limited to 1 month's terms. What was will no longer be. Jonathan Whitehall, OCHA's head of office for the so-called territories, has consistently and outrageously demonstrated his bias and agenda against the state of Israel. He will not have his visa renewed, and he will leave the country by July 29th. Mr. President, at some point, enough is enough. Enough with the hypocrisy. Enough with the bias. Enough with the endless defamation campaign against the state of Israel. Israel is doing the job the UN was created to do. We are dismantling terror networks. We are protecting civilians. We are standing up for minorities under threat. While Israel fulfills this mission, many within the UN spend all of their energy, 24/7, trying to smear Israel, protecting its own biases, siding with the very actors that fuel the chaos. It is time to return to the UN's core purpose. Israel will continue to do what is necessary to protect our people, defend our borders, help our neighbors in need, and bring our hostages home. We invite the UN, finally, to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Representative of Israel, for your statement. I shall now make a statement in my capacity as Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Nahmaduhu wa nusalli ala Rasul al-Kareem. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I am honored to preside over this important open debate on the Middle East, including the Palestinian question. I thank Assistant Secretary General Khalid Khayari for his comprehensive briefing. For decades, the Palestinian people have endured the worst form of occupation and apartheid. They have been denied their fundamental and inalienable rights, including the right to self-determination and statehood. What we have witnessed in Gaza for the last 22 months is not just a humanitarian catastrophe, but a collapse of humanity itself. Gaza has become a graveyard for innocent lives as well as for the international law, particularly the international humanitarian law. Over 58,000 Palestinians, most of them women and children, have been killed in Israel's brutal military assault. The systematic targeting of hospitals, schools, UN facilities, aid convoys, and refugee camps are not incidental. These are deliberate acts of collective punishment in flagrant violation of IHL, numerous Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, as well as the binding provisional measures ordered by the International Court of Justice. Excellencies, the hunger crisis in Gaza has reached unprecedented and deeply alarming levels. According to the United Nations World Food Programme, a third of the population not eating for multiple days in a row, an indicator of catastrophic levels of food insecurity. Excellencies, the Palestinian question is a litmus test for the credibility of the United Nations, the Security Council, and the integrity of the international law. Failure to uphold the rights of the Palestinian people will embolden impunity and undermine the legitimacy of the very international order we all claim to defend and uphold. The Security Council must live up to its responsibility and ensure compliance with its own decisions. Pakistan reaffirms its unwavering and principled support and solidarity with the Palestinian people and their right to a viable, sovereign, and contiguous state of Palestine based on the pre-1967 borders with Al-Quds al-Sharif as its capital. This is the only just and durable solution, enshrined in Security Council and General Assembly resolutions, the Arab Peace Initiative, and the consensus position of the OSCE. We urge the Security Council to pursue with unity and urgency the following concrete measures. First, an immediate, permanent, and unconditional ceasefire in Gaza and across the occupied Palestinian territory, including the full implementation of the Council Resolution 2735. We appreciate the ongoing diplomatic efforts aimed at securing a ceasefire in Gaza and hope these would yield tangible and meaningful outcomes, including a permanent end to the war. We appreciate the role played by Egypt, Qatar, and the United States in this regard. Second, unfettered, sustained, and secure humanitarian access to all civilians in need and the protection of aid workers, medical teams, and the UN personnel. Immediate steps should be taken to ensure the delivery of life-saving food and medical assistance, restore humanitarian supply lines, and prevent famine conditions from taking hold. Third, renewed and reinforced international support to UNRWA, which remains indispensable to the survival of millions of Palestinians. Fourth, an end to the forced displacement, illegal settlement expansion, and annexation of Palestinian land, particularly